Okay, so this topic, and I'm going to explain myself, is one in which a lot of people are afraid that Donald Trump will hurt or destroy the democratic process. He's challenging it, but I can guarantee you he's failing at hurting it. Now, a lot of people talk about Donald Trump's supporters and that his supporters, a significant portion of the American population, believes him and the people who are backing him. And because the senatorial and congressional Republican GOP people seem to be silent on the matter, it means they're implicit in it. Let me make it abundantly clear. Once, listen to me carefully, once the states have certified Joe Biden to the extent that he gets past 270 electoral votes, that hasn't happened yet. Once that happens, I am pretty sure all the GOP Republicans will then stand up and speak on the matter. And I also am pretty sure the GSA will then move to certify Joe Biden as the president-elect. I'm pretty sure about that. As I said before, President Trump has been given the opportunity to challenge the results, which is in his, in his rights to do constitutionally. However, while that is his right to do, it is also the right of the states to follow due process. Currently, Joe Biden is at, I believe, 260 something electoral votes, 263, I think it is, as certified by the states he has won. Okay? So, once the states themselves certify Joe Biden as the next president-elect, both the GSA and the GOP can come out with that data and officially stand behind Joe Biden as the next president of the United States of America. Okay? So, for anybody who thinks that Donald Trump will hurt democracy, he's not hurting democracy. He's strengthening it. But in order for democracy to work, it must be challenged. It must be challenged. Donald Trump has claimed that there was widespread fraud in the election. And nothing Joe Biden and his team and the media say is going to change that. But what will change that is the states themselves. When the states themselves in which the electoral race was carried out, when they declare Joe Biden as president-elect officially through their certification process, that is a loud statement that cannot be denied. When the courts, the state legislators, and the people of the states have spoken, it's different to politicians speaking. It's different to media houses speaking, especially, thank God, when put under the challenge that Donald Trump has had, both in the courts, in recounts, and in audits, so that the states had to recount and also audit the election results, which happened in Georgia, which is happening in Pennsylvania, which is happening in Nevada, Arizona, etc. So it has been challenged. Donald Trump has paid in Wisconsin to challenge the results, and audits are carried out. And when you look at the results of the audits, it shows very little statistical error or very little statistical variation from the official counts. So all you have to do is go state by state and watch what they said concerning Donald Trump's challenges to democracy. And you cannot, it's irrefutable, trying to argue with the states on their certification. So, once again, democracy wins. And this is not, again, it doesn't matter if whether you support Biden or Trump. That is irrefutable information when the states themselves are speaking, having done their forensics and continuing to do audits and forensics even after certification. Okay? Recounts, audits, whatever else after certification, which you have to understand these officials and people who are doing this counting are working overtime. Some for free. So, Donald Trump is not hurting the democracy by doing this. He's not. But he can hurt the country by not putting in place, and we see GOP senators and a lot of people in the GOP admonishing and speaking to Donald Trump about transition of power, putting things in place for transition of power. And you're actually seeing a lot more GOP senators and congressmen and people at different levels of governance speaking this way. By the way, remember, the states are run by mostly Republican legislature. The states in question, whether it's Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, these are actually Republican-led states. They went to Donald Trump. Some of these people in Donald Trump's election came to power and prominence. So to say that's a Democratic Party coup d'etat, that they're trying to steal elections, is ridiculous. His claims. And it's about time. The hour is coming where he must concede. If he doesn't, the people around him, including the GOP, whether it's through the congressional level, the Senate level, the state level, meaning the state legislators, the governors, the state officials, local officials, the secretariat, etc., Secretary of State, must now push and demand that Donald Trump concedes his defeat. This is the time when they can push, when the data is behind them, the GOP senators, electors, etc. When the data is behind Joe Biden because of the Senate and the states electing him, but through the board of canvassers, it is now time for Donald Trump to step down. And now the calls can be made. The Republican Party was very sensible in allowing due process to carry out. The Republican Party was very sensible in allowing Donald Trump his God-given and also legal right to contest the elections. And I think it's a good thing for America as to Donald Trump's claims and the people who are following him claiming, as soon as the majority of the Republican Party begins to distance themselves from Donald Trump's statements after certification tomorrow or the next day by the states for Joe Biden, as soon as the Republican Party starts to distance themselves from Donald Trump and what he's saying, he's going to form his own separate sect. Now, let me show you how powerful democracy is and why Donald Trump, who is trying to build a cult behind himself, is going to fail. The Tea Party rose with Newt Gingrich and Sarah Palin representing the heads of them with these alt facts and these alt realities. Was not grounded in facts. Some very intelligent people were part of the Tea Party. This Tea Party was a backlash, and it rose to prominence mostly in the era of Bill Clinton, and then we saw it re-erect itself in the era of Barack Obama. This set of people who support Donald Trump relentlessly do so and build their own reality around the following: survival. They're survivalists. And some of the worst kinds of people in America, particularly the white supremacists I'm speaking of, have also aligned themselves with this group of people. And these survivalists, we hear about survival and, the world and the new world order. These people are the people behind this. And some of the people are freedom fighters, really freedom fighters. And they've aligned themselves with these people because people have become skeptical of the traditional views of things, mainly because of some of the really strange things that actually do happen. And the suppressing of truth. For example, I give you a perfect example of why this group of sect of people are in existence. And to be honest, I actually agree with some of the things they say. One of them is, for example, instead of pushing for people to boost their immune systems, for example, America is looking for a wonder solution, a miracle solution, a vaccine to COVID-19. And to be honest with you, this is something that people at the extreme right, why they don't wear face masks and stuff, is because they've seen and accessed information from doctors to people all around globally contesting some of the measures that are taken as standard protocol towards the COVID virus. I myself, I'm in that camp to some degree. So the skepticism over certain traditional values and governance in a country has been fostered through this group of people. We've had alt facts. And through this, and through things such as the spy who was with America, who found out about the CIA accessing information to people all around the world, their private information. We know your privacy is now compromised. The phones, the very phone that I'm using to speak to you guys, and that's why I actually just broadcast and end the story, is being monitored. We can monitor. The government can monitor everything now. That's Snowden I'm talking about. And in addition to Snowden, who is actually in Russia, which is not cool, in addition to him, we've had the Russian misinformation from the KGB for a while. In fact, we also know about another person. I forgot what his name is. He used to spread and expose details of certain things, cover up information. I forgot what his name is. He's kind of in, what do I call it? He's in hiding now. And he had released a lot of information over time. I'm forgetting what his name is right now. And I used to actually access that information to find out about all kinds of interesting things that they're trying, and the really elite of the world are trying to do to kill us. In fact, we all know all of us know, this is a fact now, that they are trying to reduce the world population by 2 billion people. Okay, this is not a joke. This is for real. All right, so having said all of this, you know, with all these alternative truths and so on, and we have different people out there who push that agenda, and they talk about the different collective gatherings of world leaders with certain elites and so on. We know that that is real. However, the strange thing about it is that this sect, this particular group of people, have actually flipped that to actually work in the favor of the elites. Take, for instance, Donald Trump. What has Donald Trump done for the poor man? Very, very little he has done for the poor person. Very, very little he's done for minorities. Very, very little he has done for you and me. He's actually done worse than Barack Obama and given tax breaks to the very elite and helped out cronies. He's just got cronyism. He's got nepotism in the highest order. He has not been helping the average man on the ground. Yet there is a cult-like following of him because he says certain things that actually appeal to these people, but he doesn't do it. It appears like he's doing it, but he's not doing anything for the average common person. And now people have worshipped him and brought up a fervor of a cult-like fervor. But here's the thing why that is so. See, a lot of people got to understand. It's that people bought into his message. They bought into his message. He covered it up with caveats saying, I'm not a perfect person and I'm not going to try and go via orthodox methods and I need to go in hard. And Republicans love a person whose attitude is, I'm not backing down. I'm going in hard. I'll double down on what I say. And that bought into the Republican public. And Donald Trump himself commented on how stupid he thought the Republican base was, because once you have a certain attitude, they will back you and they will back you hard. He actually makes fun of them. And remember, Donald Trump was once a Democrat, which does not say much for Democrats, but nonetheless. That doesn't look good either, you know? And I would ask myself this question. Let's say Donald Trump was a Democrat. How much of the Democratic base would actually support what he's doing? He'd probably have a cult following with Democrats as well. Because it's about buying into something and then blindly giving your trust to it. This is what has happened. So some people are actually brainwashed into believing the Gukkamani Gukla that Donald Trump has been giving them. And Donald Trump knows what he's saying is nonsense, but he does not care because he knows he has a fan base that will actually believe what he's saying. And if he repeats it long enough and he's adamant about it, think about it. George Bush. No disrespect to George Bush, but he kept on adamantly saying there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And that led literally to a bipartisan agreement to go into Iraq. When you are adamant enough and you're convicted enough and you repeat what you're saying long enough, people actually believe you. It's called the bombardment. I remember when I was younger, I hated reggae music. I hated dub. But everywhere I went, it was pounding in my head. And because it pounded in my head so much, I couldn't remove it from my thoughts or from my words. A relentless assault, also known as a political campaign, a propaganda campaign, when a human being is relentlessly hammered with the same message over and over, they will eventually concede to it. However, people who have not bought into the idea are not consolidated and they're not as hammered into the idea, because this is what he's doing. He's basically hammering his point home to try to bend the reality. He's trying to let reality bend to his will, which is something that Adolf Hitler did. It's something that authoritarian leaders do. Okay. and it's undemocratic. But it's understandable that he would do something like that because he understands his base has bought into it. So he's doubling down. What he's trying to do is make sure that he consolidates his base, that his base gets stronger. And people who do not bend to his will, that is the rest of the GOP and the Republican representation, he is going to try his best to intimidate them through his stalwart followers. But here's the problem. The GOP doesn't need him nor his stalwart followers to continue onwards. Because the majority of people who voted for the GOP, as we saw in this election, did not vote because of Donald Trump. They voted because the representation that they had on the ground, they thought was best representative of themselves. Now, here is the other thing why Donald Trump continues to do what he does. Behind Donald Trump is a very calm, very collective, very selective person who speaks and brings a certain level of stability to the Republican Party. At least he appears that way. And that, my friends, is the vice president of Donald Trump. If you notice, he's very selective in how he speaks and very calm. He counters Donald Trump's very flamboyant personality. This is important to understand. Now, it will be very interesting to see how he will put together his words when the once Republican-led and the Republican-led states certify Joe Biden as the president-elect. I will be very interested in seeing how he speaks from that point on. He has been very loyal to Donald Trump. And his choice of words, because he's really dancing a very perilous line, and he's managed to stay vice president for the duration of the course. It'll be interesting to see his choice of words when he starts to speak concerning President-elect Joe Biden. I don't think he was going to be in the media. He can probably choose not to face the media on that, but at some point he'll have to speak. Why that's important is because he may look to run in 2024. He may even look to run after that. And having been in governance, having the experience of governing with a very challenging leader and somehow managing not to be removed and still somehow managing to salvage some of his image in the process, showing himself to be a steady and yet somewhat of a loyal person in the role that he is in, doing his role as well as he possibly can, because it's a challenge just to be in the Trump regime and to conduct yourself and still have that certain relay to the public. President Pence, I'm speaking about. I'm Vice President Pence. And Vice President Pence has been supportive of Donald Trump, somewhat of a yes man, but at the same time, he has not been in the public eye all the time. Very sensibly, he has chosen when he speaks to the public to help as much as possible the present regime that's in power. Yet not too much that he would be prominent in that regime. So Mike Pence has conducted himself brilliantly, if you ask me, in that he hasn't been too much in the public eye. And yet at the same time, when he does speak, he tries to stand on some sort of foundation, even when he's supporting the president, and look that way. And I find that very intriguing. So it'd be interesting to see how he approaches the certification of the states to Joe Biden having won the election and therefore declared president-elect. It'll be interesting to see if he because he has allegiance and loyalty to Donald Trump, if he will actually acknowledge that. Because at that point in time, once the states, as I said before, once they do certify a particular candidate, it's over because the states have spoken. And you can contest and whatever, but it's over. And Donald Trump has basically a couple of hours to try to salvage something, to try to stall that process from happening. He only has a couple hours. And I say this to say that he cannot stop the inevitable. And why that's important, because that goes down in history as fact. And I don't care who you support, that is something that cannot be changed. You see, the states are as close to the voice of the people as it possibly can be. The states, when they bring up their electors, it's no longer because you can say the media has done this. You can't say it's the Democrats have done this. No. Now we've gone down to the states themselves that have been tested by Donald Trump, that has been demanded recounts and audits. And after going through those processes, not seeing significant differences, and the states declaring and certifying Joe Biden as the president, as won the state elections, there's nothing Donald Trump can do from that point on to invalidate that. What he can do is still continue to contest, and he can do that as long as he wants. But he can do it even after Joe Biden becomes president of the United States, as we've seen with the investigations that went into Donald Trump's affiliation with the Russian. That can continue. But what cannot continue is that the governors of the states and congressmen and electoral officials of the states can be silent on Joe Biden being the president-elect. They now have to acknowledge him as president-elect because the states themselves spoke. Hence the United States of America. So that is why Donald Trump is not hurting the democracy. If anything, what he's doing is challenging it and making it stronger so that people can look at tweaks in the democracy, and then bilaterally and also bipartisanly, they can look at simply putting addendums on certain things to ensure a peaceful transition of power if a situation like this arises again. So they may slightly modify certain legislature, or the states themselves could do it, to ensure that once it is pretty clear that an elected candidate has become president of the United States through forecasting, I'd say it's 98% of the votes, or 99% of the electorate vote has been cast, and this person is projected to win, unless they're very close states. In those situations, they need to, once there's a clear electoral winner, then that person should be dubbed president-elect at the moment, even if it's being contested, and then a peaceful transmission of power must begin, whether or not the other candidate has conceded, as a precautionary measure to ensure that the person who has won the election has the best possible shot at governing the country when they are officially elected come January of the next year. This is very important. An addendum must be put to legislation and law to ensure that that happens. Like I said before, I do not believe the United States of America needs to get rid of their electoral college, but I do believe that they need to make some slight modifications to it. I believe the electoral college is fair in the sense that it allows for more Republican people to vote. The people saying that you need to get rid of the electoral college are mostly Democrats, and they're doing that, they're trying to do that so that they can have more of an advantage. And I do not believe that that's what the electoral college is just there to do. I don't believe it's just straight votes that determine someone who wins, but representation. And they need to review it in terms of representation of states, not representation and districts. Because like I said before, I believe that some districts get more weight than other districts do. And I think that's the reason why there's a balance. And they need to review it. And then they need to make slight modifications to it. Slight modifications to it. But I do not believe that because you won the the popular vote, that necessarily means that you should be president of the United States. Because you have to represent the United States. And certain states don't have populations as big as other states, which are more urbanized. And so a lot of people are saying every vote should count. Yes, but they're divided up into states. And so it's very important to represent the municipality you're in and the voices of the municipality you're in. And this is why the electoral voting system is important. And so I do not support abandoning the electoral system. I believe it should be modified and adjusted. The other thing I think that makes a big difference is disenfranchising colored votes, black votes. That is wrong. And also, so the procedures for voting, and I know this Republican Party likes to disenfranchise voting, and then they come out and say every vote counts. How could every vote count if you're trying to disenfranchise certain votes? They should have a check and balance system to ensure that the votes that are being counted are legitimate, no doubt about that. And I noticed that there's a racist line in Donald Trump speaking about delegitimize the votes, just like how there are illegitimate. Barack Obama's birth certification was illegitimate. That illegitimate, when he uses those words, they're racist words. And people are blatantly coming out now and declaring that. And you can see a pushback from Republicans as well as conservatives and Democrats and even independents and even the progressives on that statement that Donald Trump is saying, and they're exposing it and they're making it clear that Pennsylvania and Michigan, several other states where black votes were actually mobilized and came out, made a difference in the electoral results. And I've listened to all these people speak about, but the black vote actually made a big difference in the electoral votes results, whether you like it or not. And Donald Trump is trying to delegitimize that. Okay? And he's going to fail. Okay? And the reason he's going to fail is because in a democratic process, you want as many votes as possible. And the fact that there were record high voting was a very good thing for democracy once again. So no, Donald Trump is not in the long term going to hurt democracy. And the people who believe Donald Trump right now, it's because they're hot in the majority of them that support him is because it's hot in the electoral process and the race seems to still be on. So they're going to be supporting him like that for the moment. But I can guarantee you, change is not an easy thing. And America is going through a transition that's beautiful in that it's confronting race, it's confronting elitism, And that goes especially for the Democratic Party, the elitism, and um, the lack of empathy towards people on the right. You know, my thing with this is this. I've said it and I'm gonna say it again. The people who voted for Donald Trump, most of them are decent people. And even if 68% of them right now believe that something was happening in the election, devoid of the point that the reality is not very little fraud happened in the election. There was fraud, obviously, there always is. But the most of the people who are still siding with Donald Trump, it's only because the GOP senators, congressmen, governors, and people there, they're holding their hand at the point in time. But as soon as the GOP declares Biden as president of the United States to be, you're going to see those numbers plummet in support of what Donald Trump is saying. I guarantee you that. He is going to have a core base of about 30 something percent of the electorate. That's a strong base that supports him. And even in that strong base, and let me just make it abundantly clear, there are people who are not racist. There are people who are of all ethnicities, though sprinkled, mostly white people, who are still supporting Donald Trump. And not because I have a cousin that supports Donald Trump in Florida. Very decent guy. I love him. He's helped me out in everything. They're decent people. Okay? So even in that 30 something percent hardcore base that will support Donald Trump, still, you got decent people in there. I boil it down to about 10 to 15% of those people don't have goodwill in their minds towards other people. 10 to 15%. The other 15% of those people, I believe, are just decent people who they believed in the hype and they believe in the stuff and they just need to be convinced otherwise. And they can be convinced, even though it's been a serious brainwashing. They can be convinced when things start to change, the economy starts to change, things start to get better for them directly. Only when it translates and trickles down directly to them, they're going to start to challenge their thought process. They're still going to look with a skeptical lens, but they'll challenge the whole thing. Just as how I challenge my own thought process on masks. Just as how I challenge my own thought process on vaccination. I know vaccination is a good thing. I'm just skeptical of it because of what can go into the vaccines and what has happened in prior history. But vaccination in and of itself is not a bad thing. And I guarantee you, those people will think something like me. Just that they have this alternative view on things and they excuse Donald Trump on certain things, but they really are happy that Congress and the Senate didn't proceed as normal under Trump's reign. And now it sounds crazy, but they're kind of happy that the boat was stirred up, the pot was stirred up, and they would say he still shook up the swamp, even though he was a swamp. That's irrelevant. Okay? It's like being a fan. You're not benefiting anything by being a fan of someone. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel good when that person you back wins. They're fans of Donald Trump, sort of like. They're fans of the fact that he challenged the system. And they believe he shook up the system. They have reaped no benefits of him doing so. Zero. But what they will tell you is he actually shook up the swamp. He actually did something to the swamp. That's what they'll tell you. They'll feel like they've been heard somehow, some way. Because these people are underrepresented and they're not heard and they're not bad people. Okay? So, like I said before, I do not believe in the least. No matter if Trump is trying to do a coup d'etat right now, he's trying to find ways to overturn and subvert democracy. And yes, democracy is a delicate thing, but he's trying to do that. But his time is almost out. He has but a couple hours to try and do that and succeed. And after certification, he would officially have failed. So it really doesn't matter what the media people will tell you and try to carry out hysteria. They're just trying to get ratings. They want you to tune into their media channels. Joe Biden knows this. A lot of people from his side, the Congress, the Senate, they all know this. This is why they allow the thing to play its course. Because they're going to get political points out of this. They're just saying, we're letting it play its course. And then blah, 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 they're going to say. And the states have spoken. They will say it. Like I said before, Donald Trump has a way out. He can talk about the misunderstanding that he had with the due process, having not been a political insider. This is his way out. This is his get out of jail free card. And yes, there is going to be a plethora of litigation against him every time he conducts something that is questionable or illegal. There's going to be more and more litigation stacked up against him. He knows this, which is why he's hunkered down into the White House and he's not leaving there. The thing that might get him out is COVID-19. He may get a relapse. COVID-19 is something that Donald Trump has not been able to beat. It has been beating him up left, right, and center. It's been affecting his campaign officials, to his cabinet, to his congressional caucus. The one thing that Donald Trump did not factor that is taking down his entire regime is COVID-19, a little virus. It's so funny how God has a sense of irony. I'm a Christian. I don't always act like it, clearly. I'm a hypocrite in many respects. But I'll say this. God appoints, and then he disappoints. Donald Trump was elected by God, no doubt about it, to become president of the United States. But as God always says, if you do not acknowledge that I put you there and you think you are God and about to play God with me, I will remove you from whence you came. Nebuchadnezzar got a very first-hand account of the power of God, by God taking away his sanity and he becoming a wild beast in the field and someone else ruling in his stead. And Donald Trump is getting a dose of reality. You don't come up to the face of God and try to declare that you're God because you got a mandate from God. He can take his mandate away from you like that. Now, with respect to Joe Biden, similarly, if he mishandles the very sacred duty that has been given to him to pastor the people, if he mishandles that, similarly, the same thing will happen to him. So, all of this I say to let you know, with no uncertain terms, and by the way, one of America's greatest allies, Netanyahu of Israel, congratulated Joe Biden on winning the election. A very, very, very right-wing guy, in the man who actually made the UK secede from the collaboration of the European coalition. The current Prime Minister of England has congratulated in the House of Commons Joe Biden as president-elect. I'm saying this to say, without uncertain terms, Germany's president, etc. Or not president, she's called the something. I forgot what she's called. Chancellor. She's called the Chancellor. Merkel. I'm saying this in no uncertain terms, that these people know he's won the election. So I'm saying this to say democracy is not hurt by what Donald Trump is doing. It's tested. And all these media houses saying going forward, democracy will be hurt. No, it won't. There'll always be the Tea Party element in politics. It's important for Republicans and the GOP to establish their true identity as Republicans so they can keep their mores and standards so that they can continue to involve themselves in the debate that is ahead. I like their posture. I like the fact that they didn't say anything through the process. Silence sometimes seems like condolence, but it is not. It is that they are waiting for the infallible evidence that Joe Biden has been elected by the state as winner of the state. That when the states speak, they will then speak. They did the right thing, in my opinion, by reserving comments under a very autocratic-led regime of President Trump. They were careful to wait for the infallible evidence from the states before declaring anything. That was a wise decision on their part. And I repeat, I do not fault them for that. The fact that Donald Trump had the right to contest the elections meant that these people had the right to also be silent on this. However, knowing politicians and how they play political games, they have been quite hypocritical. Because when Donald Trump won his election, they were quick to say what they said. Now, that might be so, but still, at the end of the day, I thought it was a wise decision not to say anything until certification has happened. And we are on the cusp of that. And Donald Trump will try his greatest and his hardest to stop or delay certification. This is what he's trying to do. And this is his endpoint. This is his goal. And he will fail. He will fail. I'm telling you that now so that you know. Because according to the law, the lawmakers cannot stop due process. They have to actually go outside of due process. Stop following process all of a sudden to not certify, sorry. They have to stop doing due process. And so far, they've been consistent in doing due process. And it looks like they're intent on following through with that. So no matter what Donald Trump says, Joe Biden will have more than 270 votes by state, as acknowledged by state and certified by state, come in a couple hours. That is inevitable. And there ends his run as President of the United States, election-wise. Mike Pence will save himself, and I think he will consolidate. He will remain in the background, but he will not say much so that he can run in another election. As to all of the GOP, I am expecting them to speak out come in a couple hours. Their language is going to change, and their boldness is going to increase, because they shall now unanimously speak out with one voice, given the facts about Joe Biden's legitimacy as president-elect. And once that happens, all the Trumpiers, all the Republicans are suddenly going to be swayed by this. A lot of them now are going to have doubts about their stance. Some of them are going to double down, but a lot of them are going to question what they heard from the Trump administration. And as the GOP senator and congressman starts to come down and speak heavily about Trump's claims having been exhausted, that is the legal process, and they say, well, from what we see, the data we have seen, we see no evidence of voter fraud that Donald Trump was speaking about. He was rightful to have his claims. He was rightful to do X, Y, and Z. But as far as we can see, there is no evidence. What Tucker Carlson said is a prequel to what is about to go down with the politicians. They are about to say unequivocally this statement in a couple hours. That I can assure you is going to happen. And then you'll see how powerful the democratic process is, because I think a lot of you guys don't realize that this move by the politicians was only because they could not substantiate and make sense of and cipher through the actual challenges. So they were waiting to see what these challenges were. They were waiting to see how the courts how it would be contested in the courts. They were waiting to see, and fairly so. I mean, it's only rightful. They were also looking to see what the what the recounts would show, what the audits would show. So they sat back to watch to see if there was any evidence of widespread fraud, for which now we know for a fact there is none. So it's only a matter of time before they will speak out. And Donald Trump will try his damnedest best to stop certification from happening. He's going to try his damnedest best, and he's not going to stop it from happening. So that is the end of Donald Trump and Trumpism in respect to the GOP and the Republican Party. He probably will contest as an independent and have this alt group, this Tea Party-ish like people who will support him, but he will be sidelined. And the people who will replace Donald Trump, the candidates. Now he has some young Trumpian people who will come up after him, but people knowing that they will purport racism and try to rile up divisiveness, having tasted that, they're probably not going to want it. And they're going to look for Republican candidates which are more moderate, again, centrist. And let me just say, the centrist are actually going to do well in the future. Centrist politics is to some degree the way to go. What we had was a vacillation towards Barack Obama, and then we had a counter, which was Donald Trump. And people didn't like the Donald Trump idea at all. And so we've got Joe Biden, which is really a sort of flip back to a Barack Obama mandate that Donald Trump tried to peg as evil and so on. So we've actually had a flip back, but it's not a strong flip back. There was resistance. And it's very important to realize that people are not, some people are still somewhat disillusioned. Even though we had a record voter count, people are disillusioned, especially now in this kind of depression that America has gone back into. A lot of people are going to be saying a lot of crazy stuff because it's a depression. But I can guarantee you that I can guarantee you that democracy is not going to be destroyed or eroded. But that what you see right now is it's being challenged, and very strongly challenged in autocratic ways. And the only reason why you see such a high percentage of people in the Republican Party supporting Donald Trump's gestures is because the GOP and senators and congressmen in different levels, certain different levels, not at the state level. At the state level, the Republicans will tell you what it is. Okay, the local and state level Republican politicians and legislators will tell you, no, this state has been given to X, Y, and Z. It's Joe Biden's state. He won the election. The local level will tell you that. The levels above that, the guys in Washington, D.C., they're playing politics and they're staying silent to watch the whole scene plan out, and then they're going to say what they have to say. So I expect those people at the Washington level who are posturing and playing games to actually come out and declare Joe Biden as president-elect very, very soon. As to the GSA appointee, she will have extreme pressure placed on her to declare Joe Biden president-elect after being certified by the amount of states necessary for him to get the win. She's going to have extreme pressure on her. She's going to get pressure like she's never gotten before. And either she'll get a heart attack and die in office, or she will concede to that pressure and elect Joe Biden as president-elect. She will have no choice but to do so. So this thing is about to end in a couple hours. It's about to end. Donald Trump can contest how much he wants. That's fine. But it's about to end in a couple hours. It's over. And Donald Trump doesn't have to concede. He doesn't have to say that, but extreme pressure will be put on him from every single part of the GOP and the Republicans, Congress and Senate. Extreme pressure will be put on him to concede. He could double down and fight back. He's going to find himself isolated and alone. No matter what statements they put out, or no matter statements he tweets or whatever. In fact, I think Twitter will actually come down harder on him and may even suspend his account as he tweets more furiously. So the more he intensifies, this is where the pushback will intensify. Americans will say no to him. He has been able to throw tantrums and rant and rave. He had his way for 4 years. And now the American people are about to respond to him. And he's about to get, if he thinks he can raise hell, he's about to see the wrath of God come down on him. So he better know how he's stepping from here on in. Because if he tries to rant, you're going to deal with 154 million people will start ranting back at him. Think about that. And this is where the democratic process will be extremely powerful. And he will have to step down. He may even send orders to his devout militia, and they will not even dare step in to defend him if there is a unanimous pushback on him. We saw that once when he made a statement back in, I think it was 2017, 18, somewhere, where he made a ridiculous statement, and everyone from every quarter went in on him, and he backtracked immediately. Then he doubled back down after the pressure was abated on him. When Americans stand up and say, this is America, and they come at you, they don't care about partisanship or nothing like that. When they step up and come at you, you're not going to win. You're going to get squashed. You're going to get destroyed. And that's what you're going to see. And a lot of people don't believe, but you're going to see the wrath of democracy. You're going to see how great democracy really is. Because Americans, As much as we play partisan games, and as much as we, run our races, and as much we be fans, and much as we sometimes are divided, you're gonna see how divided Americans are when they start universally and unitedly speaking, which is about to happen. And so when people say, oh, democracy is going to be shambles and blah, 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 you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. I told you Americans are good people. They're good people. They wish the better for other Americans. That's why if Americans in another country, they go in to take out their people, to rescue their people. That's why prisoners of war, Americans fight for their prisoners of war. It's America. And you guys underestimate the power of Americans. You do. Again, I am not against people who voted for Donald Trump. I'll never be against you guys. I get where you're coming from. I would never vote for him, but he does have and does say some really sensible things, which he then spins to work in his favor. He knows the pulse of the internet and the public. He taps into that to manipulate you and I. And we've seen it with corporate business. They do it all the time. They data collect. Google, all these other people, they data collect from you, and then they pitch you things that they know you like. Yes, Donald Trump did that. He's a businessman. Not the greatest businessman in the world, but he understands certain concepts. And he understood that people were skeptical of governance. And he tapped into that. Am I wrong? Even if you're a Trump supporter, am I wrong about what I'm saying? So I didn't get caught up in, oh, we hate Trump, or this Trump. No, I understood where he was coming from. I agree with him on several things. That does not change the fact of what he's trying to do right now is anti-democratic. So the Republican Party, in and of itself, like I said before, is not bad. And they have a purpose. And I don't believe in banishing the Republican Party, but I do believe that they need, in some respects, better representation. There are much better candidates. The problem with the Republican Party is some of the guys who really bring to the table real stuff, they're generally silent. You don't really hear them. You hear from the ones who are purporting some of the more extreme views of the Republican Party sometimes. But there are senators in the Republican Party. I think of the senator of Ohio, who I personally like. I would love to see him as president of the United States. Several governors of the Republican Party, great people, and they espouse Republican values, and yet you could run the country of America on their values and have a successful country. So no, I don't think that the Republican Party in and of itself is bad. They have a different viewpoint on things, and a lot of them have sensible fiscal policies and sensible fiscal things you can do. But at the same time, the representation of the Republican Party by sometimes their leaders and other things is just, sometimes it really puts a bad taste in the mouth of people watching and observing the Republican Party and their moves. So once again, I am not against the Republican Party. I am not against the Democratic Party. I believe they should work together. That is the proper way for democracy to function. And the independents, I'm not against the independents either. I'm trying to explain to people, this is about working together, us united. And I hope under Joe Biden, I really do, that this process will actually happen. And I truly believe, to a very great extent, it will. On certain key issues. On other issues, they're going to debate it. they're not. They're going to stand their. They're going to stand their ground. But on certain key issues, which translate into you and me on the ground getting instantaneous support, I think they're going to agree. And both of them will be able to take credit for doing so. And they must both take credit. So this is where democracy is. Now, there's a very bad precedent with Donald Trump, but it leads to caveats. It leads to legislature and legislators taking certain steps, precautionary steps, to ensure that issues like this are cleaned up. And so if somebody like Donald Trump comes back into power, that there are necessary steps put in place to ensure that someone like him does not subvert the will of the people, whether in office or during the wrapping up of the office, so we can have democracy work even more smoothly, right? Of course, the persons who are clapping their hands and rejoicing at this point in time are Vladimir Putin, for sure, and also, China, even though they've congratulated Joe Biden, and also would not be putting their condolences forward right now to Joe Biden. It's interesting that Cuba was just moving towards democracy, but still autocratic. It's interesting to see what they think, because Cuba has been sort of a resistance towards democracy to some degree, but has always been respected by the Caribbean countries, even though they're not a democratic republic. And my thing with it is that respect comes because the autocratic people have been able to produce, or at least declare or allege that they produce, really good top quality product. Russia was a socialist state, and then they became a democratic state, and now they're actually a fascist state because there is the appearance of democracy, but really and truly it is a socialist communist state at the present point in time. They try to return back to their roots. They're doing a disinformation campaign through Donald Trump and his aides, and they're getting Donald Trump to do their work for them, testing the democratic process, and we all are aware of this. And that's why I said there is no rush, that let this thing play out, because it's important for the people who support Donald Trump to understand that there is no credible evidence. And when the states declare Joe Biden as president-elect, or they declare Joe Biden as winner, there is no connection between the Democratic Party and these states, because these states are Republican-led. There is no coup, because these states, again, run due process, which is transparent, that everybody can see, and then they do their recounts and their re-audits in the state according to what Donald Trump wants and he pays to do. And they would repeat the process over and over after certification to see if there's any discrepancy. So they're willing to put the entire process to the test and try it again and again and again and again. And they're also willing to be tested in the courts of law as well, to show how legitimate and legal the process is. So no matter what Donald Trump does to try and contest these states, the individual states will have to still render the mandate from the voters on who is elected for representation of the state in terms of electors. And so at the end of the day, if the states themselves come to this conclusion that Joe Biden has beat Donald Trump in these marginal states, there's nothing Donald Trump can do once he has tested them after the deadlines, after certification. There's nothing he can do to overturn it for certification unless he's got damning evidence somehow that proceeds forward after certification to get it overturned. It's very, very difficult. And that's why he's trying to delay certification. Or even, if he can, buy out electors, which is undemocratic completely. So those options that they speak of and undemocratic means, which Trump supporters do not understand, or even if they do choose to disregard at this point in time, means absolutely nothing, because those are illegitimate methods and ways to go about doing it. It's a coup d'etat when you try to attempt to do those things. And the coup d'etat against the democratic process shows you that the democratic process works so well that the only way to subvert it is using a coup. Shows that democracy was won. Now, if the democratic process had flaws in it, and if the democratic process was shown to be faulty, now Donald Trump would have had a case. He would have been able to poke holes in democracy. But all he's been having is a propaganda campaign that, Vladimir Putin and any enemy of the democratic process would do. And we've seen this try it again in different countries and fail. And obviously this will happen again. Even in my country, after the opposition lost the elections, they, as everybody who's a sore loser will do, they said there was fraud. But after carrying it to an independent body, a tribunal, there was found that there was no case of fraud. And this was an independent body of the government, not appointed by the government. To separate, it was appointed by the Elections and Boundaries Commission, and no evidence of fraud was found. When the contested challenges were contested in the court of law, they had no evidence of fraud either. And so you go to the courts, and then there was also the independent electoral body that was looked at, and there was no incidents of fraud. So they had these two-pronged things. Once the courts throw it out, you're in problems. And Donald Trump has elected certain court officials throughout the United States of America. He's also been able to succeed, at least temporarily so, at appointing a Supreme Justice. He's been able to put in infrastructure that would support certain people with certain positions. However, it must be noted that there is just so far that people can do. They can only go as far as the confines of the law. And so along the confines of the law, he has no case. Now, the people who support Donald Trump and have been supporting him all along, certain people, specific people I see, they are fascist people. And they've been trying to make a case. Why am I seeing a professor out there, and he constantly was trying to pitch a case for Donald Trump? And he's very fascist. I wouldn't be surprised he's a guy from KKK or whatever. He looks like that. Those fascist people are still around, and Donald Trump will still be around, and his fascist support will always be around, especially where he has stirred up white supremacists and other fascist groups. But fascist groups have always been in different areas of society. What Donald Trump has been able to do is enable them to come out in the open. We also have, as you see, we've seen militia parading around, and strutting their stuff to try and intimidate the country. And this militia is in different states, and they're going to try to intimidate people, just like how back in the 60s, they tried to intimidate black people from voting. They're trying to intimidate black people. In fact, what happened to George Floyd, so you guys can get a deeper picture, it was to bring terror to the public and bring terror particularly to the minorities to prevent them from voting. The white guy that did it. It's homegrown terror. And Trump has been using intimidatory tactics and terror tactics And I would not be surprised that you will have some of these so-called white militia and white people trying to pull another Timothy McVeigh terrorist act, homegrown terror on homegrown terror soil. And so it would not be surprising that they would coordinate something like that as well. But I will tell you right now, and we've got all kinds of wackos in America, both on the left and on the right. Wackos are wackos, right? They have nothing to do with it necessarily with their political allegiance. They're just wackos out there. You're going to find wackos everywhere. But one of the things you're going to realize is that as much as these people are emboldened and they have a voice, you must understand there's an underlying connective tissue that, again, can allow us with care to interface with them. So obviously, every single activity in America is monitored, whether it's by the CIA, the FBI, whoever. Of course, some of these people have infiltrated. Of course, some of these people are not even Americans. Some of these people come from European background, particularly Germany, and also Eastern Europe, and some of them are actually Russians who are now Americans. And I've seen several of them on a person-to-person basis on the internet. But I can't tell you exactly where I went. But let's just say it's something that's sort of underground. And the point behind it is, some of them are literally trying to subvert the elections, and they're happy that Donald Trump is doing what he's doing. Whereas others of them are not trying to subvert the elections, and they are actually very integral parts in building America. So you have to be able to decipher who's who. And that's kind of hard to do sometimes. But I can guarantee you that the propaganda campaign, they're going to try to carry it out a little further. And these fascists who back Donald Trump, and that's what gives him all his power, are going to try to do so. But after this election, I guarantee you it's going to be a lot harder for them to do it for several reasons. I'm not going to talk about the reasons right now, but it's an uphill. It's going to be uphill. They're going to climb because Americans have spoken, and Americans are going to speak out even louder come 2022. And by 2024, they're going to speak even louder. And the reason, see, because Joe Biden's not the greatest guy to be president of the United States in some respects, but in other respects, he's the perfect guy for the job. And it's trust me, it's still going to be perilous because some of the things he supports, I don't support. And so he has to be able to look at every scientific perspective. He cannot just look at specific scientific perspectives. I'll say that again. He must look at every single scientific perspective. And I don't think Joe Biden is a scientist. So, discernment is a very important thing. But if he gets it right, he's going to be, if he gets this healthcare right, it's going to be huge. But he has to be wise about it. And we'll see. I don't know. It's dicey. There are a lot of dicey issues in there. And we'll see how he plays through it. But democracy won. Democracy won. You guys can be comfortable about that. You don't sleep. You got to be alert. Democracy is something that can fall any minute. It's fragile, but it's strong at the same time. And it's not just Donald Trump that challenged it, but the fascist undercurrents that promote Donald Trump has supported it. And it's been tested rigorously and proven to be true, whereas the fascism has been proven to be false. And the people who bought into that fascism are going to divorce themselves from that fascism within a couple months' time, they're gonna separate themselves from it and realize, oh no, that's fascism. And they're gonna see it. They're gonna wonder. They're gonna hit themselves and say, how the hell did I even go down that road? So what I would tell them is, you bought into the person. Never buy into a person. I'm not buying into Joe Biden. I see his demeanor. I see his composure. I'm liking what I see, but I'm not buying into him. I want to see what his policies are. I want Black people to lobby for their policies. I want the progressives to push for what is sensible. Okay? I believe that they need to get some laws passed. So I'm not just going to buy into Joe Biden and his regime. No. Am I happy the democratic process has picked him? Absolutely. But I'm not going to buy in him blindly. And no one should blindly buy into things. One of the things that Zack Snyder, I'm going to shout out this guy, shout out to Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder is neither a Democrat nor a Republican. But the one thing about Zack Snyder is he does not believe in hero worship. That's what I like about the guy. He believes that viewers, unlike the Kool-Aid that Disney has been giving people concerning how they make people think about their heroes, Zack Snyder makes you decide. Makes you decide what makes someone heroic. Makes you decide. Wants you to choose. And that's the difference between Zack Snyder and the Kool-Aid that goes as Marvel stuff and agendas that are shoved down your throat through conglomerates. And when you're a thinking person, you're not somebody who's going to just grab Democratic values or grab Republican values or grab independent values because of the person you like and you just worship them blindly. That's bullshit. And if you look at me in boxing as well, you'll see the same thing. I speak on content. I speak on boxing. When I speak boxing, I speak on boxing. I'm not speaking on a particular individual character I like. And as time goes along, a lot of people are going to respect what I say because I'm not speaking from an inherent bias of me liking a guy. Some of my favorite boxers are not the best of all time. I speak about El Nato all the time, Ernesto Marcel. I really dig that dude. Alfredo Gomez. Love him. Little fighters. Beautiful little fighters. Did they lose? Absolutely. They lost fights. But I love them. I love what they do. Then I love some big hitters like Kid Chocolate. Big hitter. Incredible fighter. Which few of you guys know. Okay, some of my favorite fighters are not even pound for pound the best fighters in the world. I love Marcos Maidana. He's on nobody's pound for pound list. Highly entertaining. Love the guy. But then again, I can acknowledge brilliance when I see it. And I speak directly to the records and the accolades and also the eye test that I see. I keep it balanced. I am not a boxing connoisseur. I do have emotion, but I also assess analytically. I don't just go with emotion alone. And a lot of you out there go with emotion when you're talking about boxing. A lot of you get emotionally stirred up when I say Floyd Mayweather is the best ever and come with an argument to debunk that. And a lot of you try to come with statements and arguments that are emotionally driven. They're not factual. You know, Intangible Boxing once, he's talking about Joe Gans and all his accomplishments and everything. And I said, but Joe Gans is a flat-footed fighter, though. Floyd would beat him easily because he's flat-footed. When you look at footage of Joe Gans, he's a flat-footed fighter. Like Joe Louis, flat-footed fighter. Ain't no flat-footed fighter beating Floyd Mayweather. It's just not happening. So it's like they don't want to, they always try to, just like the Republican Party, they try to minimize. They're like, oh, well, you can't just go by the eye test. You got to go by the eye test. You got to go by what the skill sets are. You have to rack up the skill sets. Amongst other things. When you are looking at fights, when you are looking at fighters, and you're looking at matchups and you're making predictions, you always use the eye test. You always talk about the skill sets. You always talk about what a fighter was vulnerable about. That's part of your diagnosis. And so similarly, if you're going to do a hypothetical matchup, that means you're going to try and make a prediction of something that would never come to pass, but nonetheless, you're trying to make as accurate a prediction. You have to look at the eye test. You have to look at the skill sets. This is duh. You can also look at the talent. You can look at the God gifting, quick twitch muscles, and a lot of quick twitch muscles these days. But at the end of the day, you have to look all around at how the performance of the fighter is, not just documented information. That does not tell you everything. So once again, it's important to understand that I don't want to hear word of mouth. I want to see it for myself. Convince me with my eyes. Convince me that you are what you say you are. That's why I said footage trumps accounts. Okay? And I said that, and I say the same things over and over, and people are now beginning to respect my opinion on these things. I said with Sugar Ray Robinson, they're saying, oh, Sugar Ray Robinson, he was a totally different fighter. He's so much faster. And so I'm like, fuck that. He had the same style that we saw when he was at 160. So what the fuck? And I've seen footage on him. I've seen footage of him when he was in lightweight, in the amateurs. He ain't nothing special. He was a bit faster. He didn't do nothing special or different than he was doing when he was at 160. Now, some people will take what I just said out of context, and they'll say, "Oh," and they'll just take a nugget and say, "Oh, he said Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't nothing special." And that's not what I said. I said he was nothing special or different to what he was doing at 160. It was essentially the same Sugar Ray Robinson. He's just bigger and a little slower. When you put on mass, you're obviously going to get slower. Had nothing to do with the prime. And he was wild with certain shots. They say it was bowler shots, but he was wild. Body, head. 3-4 body shots and then up top of the head shots. That's what he used to do. Oh, he used to get them to the body with combinations. Yeah, because they didn't protect their body properly. And then most of them didn't use the eye guard, so they didn't protect their head properly either. And we've seen it with Teofimo Lopez. He don't protect his head. So he gets bopped upside the head. And overhand rights and shit catch him on his head. That don't happen to Floyd Mayweather. Why? He changed levels. He will dip under the punch, and then he will use the high guard. If you look at him against Pacquiao, he wasn't using a lot of the Philly shell. When you look at him against Zabjud, he wasn't using a lot of Philly shell. When he fought against Victor Ortiz, he wasn't using the Philly shell. Floyd Mayweather adapts. See, a lot of people just don't understand boxing. So I'm talking about what he actually did in the ring against certain fighters. That counts for shit. It's not just, oh, he fought this Hall of Famer and he fought that Hall of Famer. Yeah, but all of them got the same fucking style. So who gives a fuck? Sugar Ray Robinson fought Jake LaMotta. What is Jake LaMotta? A swarmer. He fought Rocky Graciano. What is Rocky Graciano? A swarmer. He fought Rocky Castellini. What was Rocky Castellini? A swarmer. He fought Gene Fullmer. What is Gene Fullmer? A swarmer. Okay, how many swarmers is he gonna fight? So he fought one smart fighter in Kid Gavilan, right? He actually fought another. I forgot what the kid's name is, from England. He was a smart fighter as well, and he beat him once. You see what I'm saying? So Fritzy Zivic was a good fighter, and he said it was his toughest fight of his career. Georgie Abrahams was a good fighter. These were boxers. They weren't swarmers, aggressive boxers. All right, never fought Charlie Burley. Never. You think he wanted a piece of Charlie Burley? He didn't want no piece of Charlie Burley. That's a smart fighter. Paul Pender, smart fighter, beat him twice. Danny Moyer, he beat Danny Moyer once. Came back, Danny Moyer beat him. Smart fighter. right? Joey Archer, relatively smart fighter. Okay, of course, that was Sugar Ray Robinson's last fight. My point, anyway, is this. Sugar Ray Robinson made his career off of fighting, yes, heavy punchers and bad motherfuckers, no doubt about it, but a lot of them weren't boxers. Out of the top guys he faced weren't boxers. Even, what's his name? Shit. Bobo Olsen, right? Bobo Olsen was a swarmer. Do you get my drift? Now, Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, even though he fought like a pressure fighter, wasn't a swarmer. He fought like Sammy Sadler. When you look at Zab Judah, wasn't a swarmer. You have Emmanuel Burton wasn't a swarmer, right? You had what's his kid name? Shit, I forgot his name. Angel Manfredi wasn't a swarmer. It was a quality boxer, right? Tony Pepper wasn't a swarmer. Arturo Gatti wasn't a swarmer. Shit. Kid with the it's not, it'll come to me. Chop Corley wasn't a swarmer. These were boxers. You know what I mean? So, and I could go on with guys who weren't swarmers. All right, Shane Mosley wasn't a swarmer, right? The point is, Canelo wasn't a swarmer, right? I can go on and on about fighters who were boxers. Andre Berto wasn't a swarmer, right? I can go on and on. The point is that a lot of people think these guys are superior to Floyd Mayweather. But when you start dropping the facts on them, they can't say shit. Another thing they try to say is, Mayweather's competition was inferior to these other guys. All I gotta say, I don't gotta say much, but all I gotta say is Manny Pacquiao. That's all I gotta say. I don't have to say nothing else. Manny Pacquiao. That ends that discussion. And remember, we got Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez, Marcus McDonough, Zab Judah, Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Oscar De La Hoya, Jose Luis Castillo, Ricky Hatton, Arturo Gatti, Diego Corrales, Genaro Hernandez, Jesus Chavez, Carlos Hernandez, Angel Manfredi, Emmanuel Burton, Philip Endu, Chop Corley, to mention a few. I didn't even try to mention. I just put all those guys, the Hall of Famers and all the other top tier guys to one side. And I just spoke about Manny Pacquiao. They tried to down Floyd Mayweather's opposition and his career because they know he's really good. So just like the Republicans, they're going to try to disenfranchise him to say he was less lesser than Sugar Ray Leonard. We all know, as much as he talks about Sugar Ray Leonard facing these Hall of Famers and these guys are right in the top 10 and top 100 greatest fighters of all time, that's only because it's been 80 years ago. So what the fuck? Sorry, not 80 years ago, but 20 years ago, whatever the fuck it is. No, actually 1980, 2020, 40 years ago. Okay, they've all been enlisted in the Boxing Hall of Fame. They've all been assessed by the Ring magazine and all that. But when all is said and done, Pacquiao's career is not even over, motherfuckers. It's not even over. But just imagine when Pacquiao's career is over, all is said and done. We start looking about 10, 15 years from this point, whenever Pacquiao retired, when all these guys retire, and they assess Pacquiao's going to be up there with the top 10, top 15 greatest fighters of all time. Fuck out of here. He's going to be in that list. Okay? He's going to be. if he isn't already. So will Mayweather. But here's the thing. It won't just be Pacquiao. Okay? You're going to have to mention Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez is going to be in that category. I can guarantee you that. And that's two names that Floyd Mayweather have beaten. All right. He never had them beat him. He never had draws. And those guys have outperformed and outachieved anybody on Sugar Ray Leonard's list. If you're going by resume and achievements. And then if you go by the eye test, again, they have outperformed anybody. Thomas Hearns versus Canelo Alvarez. I got Canelo all day. What he did to Austin Trout, if he do that to Thomas Hearns, he's going to knock his fucking ass out. Cold. And Austin Trout was a southpaw. You saw what he did to Sergey Kovalev. Thomas Hearns had no chance in hell of beating Canelo. Now, Leonard's a different story. I give him more of a chance. But again, Canelo's so much bigger than Leonard. I see that going like Canelo versus Mika Cotto. I see Canelo getting the decision because he hit harder than Leonard. He's not compromised. He's not weight compromised like Donnie Lalonde. Donnie Lalonde ain't nowhere near Canelo's skill and ability. Leonard might have to use his feet to try it out boxing. Do a Arislandi Lara stuff. But once Canelo started working that body, I don't know about that. Roberto Duran versus Canelo Alvarez. It's a good fucking fight. That's a good fucking fight. But Canelo got that defense. And he is bigger and stronger than Roberto Duran. And I don't know. I think he stops Duran. You heard me say it. I think he stops Roberto Duran. Because he's a counterpuncher. That's what he do. Very precise. Very good defense. Benitez gets stopped by Canelo. His head's down the center line. It's that 1-2's. He opened for the 1-2. Right? Marvin Hagler versus Canelo Alvarez. Great fight. Hagler will have activity. Canelo will have quality punches and defense. But at the end of the day, as great as Marvin Hagler is, I got him losing to Canelo. Too big, too strong, too skilled. I haven't beaten Marvin Hagler. Just like how he beat Mika Cotto. So at the end of the day, Canelo is just a better fighter than the Fabulous Four. And his resume is already showing you how much better he is. And we'll see how much further Canelo goes and how he faces and performs against Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrew, who's going up to super middleweight, Billy Joe Saunders, if he does ever face Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, who he's about to face next. And Ballyman Boy says Trump will be president or not. He's president right now, dude. Donald Trump is president right now. What are you talking about? He will be president. He is the president right now. I don't understand what you're talking about. He's president. He's not. He will be president. He is the president. Will he be with all this stuff going on? Bellyman Boy, he is the president. Do you understand that? He has not stopped being president. Just because Joe Biden has won the election doesn't mean that Donald Trump is not president. He is president until I believe it will be January 21st or something like that. No, Biden's not the president. The media reported him as president-elect. He's not the president. He will be inaugurated as president if all things go according to process. He will be inaugurated as president January next year. Donald Trump is the president until then. Donald Trump is president of the United States. That's the law. There's due process that has to happen. So Donald Trump is the president. It's not he will be the president. He is the president. I thought Dana White was the president of UFC. I think he is. I think Dana White is. But the UFC is owned by two brothers or something like that. But he is the president of the UFC, yes. And he's getting into boxing too, so it should be cool. Good to see Dana White stepping into boxing. Looking forward to it. All new players are always welcome. So yeah. You know, a lot of people do not understand that facts matter. You know, facts matter. Would Floyd Mayweather beat Pacquiao if they did a rematch? I don't think they would do a rematch, first of all. But let's say they have a rematch as an exhibition. That's an idea that can be entertained. So Mayweather versus Pacquiao as a rematch as an exhibition. Floyd's retired. He's not coming back into boxing. I'm pretty sure about that. But let's say they have a rematch as an exhibition. That would be a hell of a fun thing for a lot of people. Think about this. Floyd has already beaten Pacquiao. He knows how to solve him. Right? And then no, I don't think he's ever coming back into pro boxing. His days as being a boxing pro is over. But what I can tell you is it could be a hell of an exhibition, and a lot of money could flow. But here's the thing: Floyd already knows how to solve Pacquiao's style. He knows how to beat Pacquiao. So what do you think will happen in a rematch, an exhibition rematch? You think he'll lose to Pacquiao? Absolutely not. He knows how to solve Pacquiao. You see? So all that'll happen in a rematch is he'd beat Pacquiao even more convincingly. And he'd whip himself up into shape as it's necessary for an exhibition, and he would do all the necessary things. Bellyman Boy says depends on if Pacquiao's right shoulder injury was legit or not. Regardless, it has nothing to do with his shoulder. See, in this case, it has to do with distancing and footwork. Your feet is what gets you into position. It's not your hands. So regardless of whether his shoulder was injured or not, and by the way, Floyd's two shoulders and his two hands were injured in that fight, and he never made excuses about it. But regardless, he has to get himself, and Pacquiao had to get himself within range to be able to deal with Floyd Mayweather. Yes, Floyd Mayweather has excellent footwork. Floyd Mayweather is a sort of like a Joe Louis of boxing. Floyd Mayweather is very economical. Every punch he makes count. Every movement he makes count. He's very efficient in his movements. He's very efficient in his punches and his punch selection. And with a guy that's so exact as Floyd Mayweather, it's very hard for Pacquiao to really do what he wants to do because Floyd cuts off the angles that Pacquiao tries to approach him with. Before Pacquiao can even try to go at a particular angle he wants to go at, Floyd Mayweather's already pivoted into that counter angle. And that's why Pacquiao's always in front of Floyd. And that's why Pacquiao can't, people say, well, where's all his angles? Well, his angles are taken because Floyd keeps on pivoting and taking away those angles. So Floyd Mayweather's the kind of guy who, is really, really good at the sweet science. And he makes the fights look easy, but as you can see with Keith Thurman or with, any other boxer, even Adrian Broner who faced Manny Pacquiao, they can't execute like how Floyd did. And I argue Sugar Ray Leonard wouldn't be able to execute the way how Floyd executed either. Bellyman Boy says, what about, no way to do this, 2010, who would win then? So again, styles make fights. So Pacquiao would come with the same style that he has, just a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more reckless. Mayweather would have come with the style that he has, as you can see. And from what you saw, even from round 2 onwards, Floyd Mayweather kept on catching Pacquiao with the check hook. I believe because Pacquiao would have been so aggressive and the fact that Floyd would have been younger, more athletic, he'd have caught Pacquiao with the check hook several times and eventually knock him out just like how he did to Ricky Hatton. So I think Floyd would have actually knocked out Pacquiao. But in 2010, Pacquiao would have to have taken the test. So if he had taken the test and passed the test, I do believe Floyd would have faced Pacquiao, and I think Floyd would have knocked out Pacquiao, actually. Because Floyd knocked down Juan Manuel Marquez. Oscar was a little too big for him. He did hurt Oscar once or twice, but he wasn't able to knock down Oscar. But then he also knocked out Ricky Hatton. And he also knocked out Sean Bay Mitchell at that time. This was when he was younger. His hands were better. I think around 2009, 2010, his hands were still kind of holding up a bit. Bellyman Boy said Sugar Ray Leonard Prime versus Mayweather Prime. Okay, so the thing about both guys in their primes, now you're talking about Prime Floyd Mayweather. Prime Floyd Mayweather was like, we're talking about the Floyd Mayweather coming up from super featherweight all the way up till super lightweight. That's Prime Floyd Mayweather. Prime Floyd Mayweather had a very short stint in welterweight in his prime. I would say up to Oscar De La Hoya, as late as probably Ricky Hatton. Floyd was in his prime. So you're talking about a 22-year-old Floyd all the way up till 30. He was in his prime, right? He didn't have shoulder injuries, or he had shoulder injuries, not to the extent that he had when he left boxing. Okay, so he had some pretty bad shoulder injuries, and he had some pretty bad hands during his career, but he was able to manage them to the extent where you had him throwing a lot of combinations and flurries, and even if he broke his hand, he got it fixed back, still using painkillers. So Prime Floyd Mayweather was actually Pretty Boy Floyd. The Prime Floyd Mayweather was Pretty Boy Floyd. Money Mayweather, I think one fight maybe, the Ricky Hatton fight, Money Mayweather was in his prime. We could push it and say up to the Marquez fight, he was in his prime when he was 32. You can push it that far. But basically, Mayweather in his prime threw combinations. He was a very aggressive fighter. He had really excellent defense. Shout out to you, brother. So that was Prime Floyd Mayweather, okay? Floyd Mayweather was not in his prime when he was facing guys like Victor Ortiz, Miguel Cotto, etc. Okay? He was like 33, 30. I think he was 34 years old when he faced Victor Ortiz. And he had problems with his shoulders, he had problems with his hands. Everybody knew this. It's a matter of record. And so he wasn't throwing as many combinations. The guys were a lot bigger than him. And he started picking his shots. So he would hit you with he would throw like 40 punches around, probably land 20 something of them, right? So Sugar Ray Leonard in his prime was stopping everybody. I mean, at welterweight, his prime was when he was like from 20 all the way up till he was like 28. Okay, Sugar Ray Leonard's prime was somewhere around there. When he fought Marvin Hagler, I argue he wasn't really in his prime, even though he was like 30 years of age. He wasn't really in his prime. Okay, so let's talk about Prime Mayweather versus Prime Leonard. It would have been a more exciting fight, believe it or not, than Prime Leonard versus Money Mayweather when he was out of his prime. I think Money Mayweather schools Sugar Ray Leonard, okay? Schools him. But Pretty Boy Floyd would actually have a competitive fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. That would be a hell of a fight. Pretty Boy Floyd had so much skill, but he lacked some experience. Same with Sugar Ray Leonard in his prime. The problem with being in your prime is you lack experience. So that would be a good fight. Pretty Boy Floyd versus Sugar Ray Leonard would actually be a closer fight than Money Mayweather versus Sugar Ray Leonard, where Money May would control Sugar Ray Leonard. But I would argue that Pretty Boy Floyd and Sugar Ray Leonard would be a hell of a fight. I think that Pretty Boy Floyd is Sugar Ray Leonard 2.0. And so I think that he has the better skills. He would be the smaller guy, but I think he had the better skills. He had the better abilities. He was not as fast throwing his combinations, but he was very quick. His timing, I think, would have made a difference between him and Sugar Ray Leonard, but it would have been a good fight. Good back and forth, good to and fro. I just think that Money Mayweather is just a lot sharper. I think he's a lot more more accurate Sugar Ray Leonard. I think he has better defense than Sugar Ray Leonard. And as a result of that, I think he would beat Sugar Ray Leonard on points. Sugar Ray Leonard has a great jab. He doesn't have a variety of jab selection. Leonard, just like Austin, would catch Floyd Mayweather with a couple of jabs, push him back to the ropes, and then Pretty Boy Floyd would work his magic in terms of fighting off the ropes, because he's very good at fighting off the ropes. He rolls both ways. We've seen it with Philip Endu. We've seen it with Jose Luis Castillo. We've seen it with Diego Corrales. We've seen it with Jesus Chavez. We've seen it with Manny Pacquiao. We've seen it with Miguel Cotto. He's really excellent off the ropes. But I do think Sugar Ray Leonard would bloody Pretty Boy Floyd's nose. I think Pretty Boy Floyd would walk into some shots. I think Sugar Ray Leonard would try to establish range with the jab. The problem with Sugar Ray Leonard is he doesn't have the array of skills that Pretty Boy Floyd has. You won't see Sugar Ray Leonard bobbing and weaving, which Pretty Boy can do. Look at Pretty Boy versus Tony Pep. Look at Pretty Boy versus Emmanuel Burton. Emmanuel Burton was a hell of a fighter. Got a lot of specialized skills and abilities. But again, Pretty Boy Floyd beat Emmanuel Burton, showing that he is capable of beating a slick, skilled fighter. And I just think that Sugar Ray Leonard, as slick and skilled as he was, and as long and rangy as he was, with the power that he had, I still think that Pretty Boy Floyd would have to both bait Sugar Ray Leonard into him to counter him, to diffuse the range, as well as he would also pivot around him, as well as bob and weave to the inside and work him on the inside. Which Sugar Ray Leonard was also very capable of doing. He could fight, he could infight pretty well as well. But I just think the defense that Pretty Boy Floyd had is what made the difference. If Sugar Ray Leonard beat Pretty Boy Floyd, it would be off of activity. He's not as accurate as Pretty Boy Floyd would have been, but maybe he could steal the fight by flurrying at the end of rounds, being more active at the end of the rounds. It depends, though, because that's actually a pretty competitive fight. Pretty Boy Floyd versus Sugar Ray Leonard, because both of them would lack certain experience and certain refinement. Now, Money Mayweather would comprehensively beat and control Sugar Ray Leonard, okay, a prime Sugar Ray Leonard. And the older Sugar Ray Leonard didn't have the physicality. He didn't have the athleticism that he used to have, even though he had much more know-how. Like, Sugar Ray Leonard today understands the game a lot better than the young Sugar Ray Leonard, you know? So there's those things to consider. Shout out to Bellyman Boy. Where does Pacquiao fare as one of the best? Actually, Pacquiao's up there in terms of the greatest fighters of all time. Definitely, undeniable. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. Now, in terms of best fighters of all time, he doesn't rank that high, but his resume is ridiculous. It's not as high as greatest fighters of all time. I think he's a greater fighter than Floyd Mayweather is. I think, people say that Floyd is the greatest of this era. I don't think so. I think he's the best of this era, which is totally different to being the greatest of the era. In my opinion, Pacquiao is the greatest of the era, and that involves things like coming back from knockout losses to becoming world champion and dominating. I'm talking about a guy who came up from, in the pros, that is, came up from 105, which is strawweight, all the way up to 100 and I think it's 51 pounds. I'm talking about crossing 10 divisions. He crossed 10 divisions, okay, and phenomenally kept being very competitive. And this is a guy that and currently is a welterweight champion of the world right now as we speak, the WBA champion, which is the oldest belt in boxing. So, I mean, Manny Pacquiao is a phenomenal guy, and he's done some very record-breaking things. Even though I don't consider him an 8-division world champion, I consider him a 6-division world champion. However, he has won lineal titles also in 2 additional divisions, which is remarkable, period, point blank, period. Nobody's done that in recent history. He's beaten guys. I'm gonna just name names here. This is just ridiculous. Keith Thurman, Adrian Broner, Lucas Matisse, fucking crazy. Timothy Bradley, Jesse Vargas, fucking Chris Algieri, Brandon Rios, Juan Manuel Marquez, Miguel Cotto, Oscar De La Hoya, Shane Mosley, you know, Ricky Hatton. These are just fucking epic names, okay? um, you know, um, um, he's beaten Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera, okay? It has a draw with what the fuck is his name? The Dominican Republic kid. Okay. So I mean, those are just fucking epic names, period. Epic names. Hall of Famer kind of like names, you know what I mean? So when you talk about Manny Pacquiao, you gotta put respect on that name. He's beaten 20 world champions. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, there are more world champions in the world. Get the fuck out of here. 20 world champions, motherfucker. 20 fucking world champions. All right. No. This man is great, man. So, and then think about this. Factor this into the equation. This motherfucker is a senator. He's doing movies. He's singing. He plays pool. He's got a basketball league. Come on, man. And he's boxing. I mean, come on now. So, I mean, and may become president of the Philippines. No, Manny Pacquiao is definitely one of the greatest boxers of all time. He's probably up there in the top 5, top 10 greatest boxers of all time. It's just what it is. And he's one of the greatest. I believe he's one of the greatest flyweights of all time. He's one of the greatest flyweights of all time. He's also one of the greatest. Is it featherweight or super featherweight? I think it's featherweight. I think he's one of the greatest featherweights of all time as well. So, I mean, shit. You gotta be kidding me, right? This is Manny Pacquiao we're talking about. And no matter how you try to discredit him, no matter what you say, there are facts that support what I just said. Bellyman Boy says the last Juan Manuel Marquez fight was Pacquiao's best performance, even though he got KO'd. Ambient style. He was like 22 years old again that night. I argue his best performance today is Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman. That's his best performance today. There's no questioning how well he performed. I thought he showed discipline. He showed poise. Gotta go drink some water. Oh, he's phenomenal, man. People talk about Roberto Duran, but Duran ain't done shit compared to Pacquiao. The other guy that they talk about is Thomas Hearns, because he's also, I think he's a 5-divisional world champion. And, he fought and won titles from 147 all the way up to 175, But, Hearns' resume don't touch Pacquiao resume. It just doesn't. It doesn't. And none of them actually, not even Sugar Ray Leonard's resume touches Pacquiao's resume. And Sugar Ray Leonard has, of course, great Hall of Famers and guys that they call all-time greats in there. Mayweather's resume is ridiculous as well. So that's why I said, once you say Manny Pacquiao, they say, oh, well, Ray Leonard, he faced, better opposition than Floyd. And I'm like, Manny Pacquiao. That's all I gotta say. Manny Pacquiao. Are you nuts? Ray Leonard didn't even want to face Manny Pacquiao. He did not want to face Manny Pacquiao. He didn't want to face Aaron Pryor. That's the original Manny Pacquiao. And that was an orthodox version. He didn't want to face him. He didn't want to face him. Aaron Pryor would be calling him out and everything. He did not want to face Aaron Pryor. And that was a less qualified Manny Pacquiao. Because what y'all don't realize is Sugar Ray Leonard had a difficulty with guys who were smaller than him. Guys who were smaller than him, were quicker than him, or could deal with his speed. And they also gave him problems because guess what? His punches fly above them. They get under his punches. See, y'all don't know boxing, man. If y'all knew boxing, y'all wouldn't even be talking about this shit. Think about what I'm saying. He struggled with Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran was a smaller guy than him. He struggled with Terry Norris. At the time, Terry Norris was a smaller guy than him. He struggled with Hector Camacho. Hector Camacho was a smaller guy than him. Look at the guys he lost to. They're smaller. His speed is not so much a factor because guess what? They're as quick as he is. You see what I'm saying? So he did not face Aaron Pryor. He lost to Roberto Duran. And Roberto Duran was a flat-footed fighter. But Roberto Duran came up in weight, so he would have somewhat of an equivalent speed level to a Sugar Ray Leonard. And what Sugar Ray Leonard did in the rematch was he tried to catch Roberto Duran when he wasn't in shape. You got it? Think about all of Sugar Ray Leonard's fights. He's usually fighting guys who are bigger than him and slower than him. Marvin Hagler. Slower than Leonard. By light years. Thomas Hearns was equally as quick as Leonard. Equally as fast as Leonard. And he had a hard time with Thomas Hearns. The 2 times he faced him. Right? Bellyman Boy says Joe Louis was so iconic because of his second fight against Nazi Germany, Max Schilling. Gained a lot of respect that night, even from white folks that were against him. One big icon. Hell of a fighter. Hell of a fighter. Joe Louis. Hell of a fighter. It was so sad how America treated him with the tax problems. How they treated him. They should have honored that guy and forgave his debt. They didn't. The boxing scientist, what's up, my dude? Boxing scientist says Hagler was dangerous. No doubt about it, man. It was a bad motherfucker. Hagler was more powerful than all of them. For sure, for shizzle. No doubt, no diggity, but he was slow as fuck compared to Leonard. Leonard was fast. You know what Leonard's game plan was? Outbox the motherfucker. Outbox him. He got into his head, manipulated him to make him feel that he was some kind of boxer. So Hagler came out orthodox. And then you know what he did? He said that, and then he was not putting too much weight on his punches. So Hagler was like, "Look at this sissy. Look at this sissy with these pity pat punches." That's what they say about Floyd, right? Look at this sissy with the pity pat punches, right? And he was just boxing circles around Hagler. Hagler couldn't touch him. Then Leonard sat down in the pocket and started circling around Hagler. Or even a close fight. Leonard knew he couldn't stop Hagler. And outbox him. That's what you do to guys like Hagler and Durant. You outbox him. You outbox him. You still putting leather on him. But you're turning him. You're turning him. That's what you do to Triple G. Watch what Canelo did. And then Canelo took it to the next level where he walked Triple G down because he covered the angles that Triple G tries to throw at. So he's blocking and he's still throwing at the same time. He walked Triple G down. He walked him back. Timing and speed. Mayweather walked Canelo down. Timing and speed. Not power. Timing and speed. Power is important too, but timing and speed make a guy back up. Because he's constantly resetting in his mind, trying to figure out how to get you. Because you're backing him up and you're like, what the, this motherfucker backing me up? How the fuck is he backing me up? You know what I'm saying? I heard a 168 pounder, he sparred Floyd. And he's like, and he, you know, I think he's called Mama's Boy. And he was like, this motherfucker was backing me up. He was backing me up. So what the fuck is going on? How's this little guy backing me up? Because Floyd's a little guy. You know? He's a little guy. Well, how the hell is this little guy? That's like how people say, how the fuck is Pacquiao backing this dude up? Because you see Pacquiao, he like 5'3", short little. What they call it? What they call it? What's the dinosaur's name? That keep them his head. He's going T-Rex arms. This little T-Rex, these little T-Rex arm guy. You know, be dropping people and shit. They can't understand it. They'd be like, but you know, the textbook tells me, the textbook tells me pop my jab, and you know, I'll back him up. Nah, not with these special guys. Like I heard a couple of people say, you know, Canelo don't have no head movement. I even heard Roger Mayweather say that. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. He has head movement. But it's so fucking subtle, and he keeps his head off the center line. It's so fucking subtle that, you know, you don't realize he shifts head slots on you. He does it so subtly, so skillfully. You know. Again, skills pay the bills, baby. Bellyman Boy says Hagler versus Pacquiao. Hey man, smash the like button if you like what you're hearing. Hagler versus Pacquiao. Hagler's too big for Pacquiao. Pacquiao never fought at 160. Hagler's too big for Floyd too. Golovkin too big for Floyd. I'm not saying that they would beat them. It's just that Floyd and Pacquiao, they don't even make the weight of 160. Like Pacquiao, what's the highest Pacquiao coming? You know, I think the highest he ever came in was 152 in his career. You know? He's not even a super middleweight. A full-fledged super middleweight. Floyd, the most he's ever came in his career was 150.5. So Floyd and Pacquiao, I mean, what you might have to do, you might have to make them wear a trench coat with shoes on, fill up their coat with coins to try and make 155 or 154.5 to face Marvin Hagler. You know, they're just not middleweights, you know. They're small guys, you know. Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, you know, Duran. These guys were much bigger than them. Bellyman Boy says, did you see the fight between Guerrero Sr. and Senior? A lot of beef. Yeah, it's very entertaining. It's very entertaining, guys. But you know, I wouldn't pit Guerrero Sr. against Floyd Mayweather Sr. And Floyd Mayweather Sr. is a boxer. He's a professional boxer. It's just the difference in levels, you know. Those guys would scrap it out. It wouldn't be fair to Guerrero Sr. I mean, as fit as he is, he's not like he's not on Floyd Mayweather Sr.'s level of boxing. That's my personal perspective. But it's good for show. To watch them two old men go at it would be funny. Maybe they could do it in Legends only. You know what I'm saying? Mike Tyson's Legend only. You know, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. is a very interesting thing. The Boxing Scientist says, try some Manuka honey will cure your cough. No, it's reflux. My cough is based on reflux. So I just drank some water. You won't hear me coughing so much. I have a reflux problem. So it's not, I know honey's like a lozenge. You can also use olive oil, but I don't use either right now. It's just a phase where I do some really stupid ass things that put me in this position. It's the actions that actually I do that cause me to be the way you hear me coughing like this. Sometimes I don't drink enough fluids, enough water. The place here is very hot. Climate in my country is very hot, so that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons why. But there's other things I do is just not good, and I know better, and I still do them, and then I suffer these consequences. But very soon it will go away. And I've had it worse than this, so this is okay. I'll be fine. Hopefully my body heals back from the damage. Shout out to the Boxing Scientist, by the way, and Bellyman Boy. You guys joining this discussion is really great. You know, even though I started as a political discussion, I really, for me, politics is more about you guys and me and what we as people can do. More than these elected officials, which is cool that the elected officials do things, but I'm a small businessman, so I don't depend on the government for shit. I don't depend on them for nothing. I depend on me. I do my business, and I try to interface with people. For me, politics with people is people to people things on the ground. So that's why I try to advocate for you guys to build relationships with people on the ground, get to know people for who they really are, not just their political allegiance, and not just because people stereotype people as this person's a racist and this person's right. Fuck that. Get to know people for who they really are, because I think that's where we'll break down the barriers, and that's where we'll actually get proper representation. Even in my area here, I get to know the counselor of the area, and I have certain proposals and ideas towards him, and I try to, speak to him on a grounds level. So what I try to explain to a lot of you guys is, please don't just buy into the political bullshit. Okay, remember, these guys are politicians. You exact change on the ground. You make a difference on the ground. And that's where effectual change will actually happen. From your grassroots stuff, you rise up and you speak your stuff. Okay. Bellyman Boy says, I heard the Joe Rogan show. Some jiu-jitsu gyms have their fighter consume weed and roll with each other. Astonishing. The right amount can get you super focused. I haven't looked into that study, so I can't say anything on it. I'm not really a person who uses marijuana or weed. However, for medicinal purposes, my mom, when it was dealing with pain, we were using it as an alternative to morphine, and we were staggering it with the morphine, so she didn't use too much morphine because the morphine was dehydrating her, as well as the weed. We were using marijuana oil. She wasn't smoking it. She was just taking it in with, bread and other things, and it was working. But dude, when you're in a family with different people with different opinions, they can make you abort certain things and take on other things. And it was a battle. It was a battle to the very end. Mike Alvarado TB says Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather is going to be a 50-50 fight. Bellyman Boy says, can't wait to have some in the Arizona we just passed here. y'all crazy ass motherfuckers. You better not smoke that shit. You know what you can do? It makes a great herbal tea. You should boil it and drink it. Drink the leaves. It's a very good tea for glaucoma, and stuff. Do not over abuse the weed. It can dehydrate you, and it can bring a lot of health problems. So be careful. It might be a herb, but and especially you gotta grow your own fucking weed. That's what I tell you. Grow your own weed. In my country, it's decriminalized as well, so you can grow your own plant, but you can't do it for commercial reasons. Grow your own fucking weed. That's what I suggest. Don't buy weed from other people. Bellyman Boy says, I like edibles, hate smoking as I'm an athlete. Good. It's very good. The boxing scientist says smoking anything is no good for the body. Thank you very much, sir. That is correct. The particulates irritate your lining, as my lining is irritated right now. But I do advocate for, as medicinal purposes, marijuana oil. Particularly, what is it called? I forgot what it's called. I forgot what the oil is called, but the part of the oil that doesn't have THC in it. It's very good. CBD oil. It's very good, but you have to know who you're getting the CBD from. CBD oil is very medicinal. It worked for my mom. Man, if it wasn't for the opposition I was getting, yes, CBD, yes, the cannabinoid oil. It's very good. It's very healthy. Marijuana is a plant. It's a herb, and therefore it's very healthy. It's very calming. Yes, it makes you. It can get you into a euphoric state if there's some THC in it. And using it daily is very good in a certain dosage for people who have cancers, diabetes, autoimmune diseases. CBD oil can work and assist in helping you to actually restore healthy conditions to your body. So, but it has to be used in a certain amount. Yeah, you will have to take a lot of sleep, a lot of rest. Your body's gonna shut down for a couple of days, so you'll be sleeping a lot. My mom used to sleep a lot. The CBD oil. She'd wake up pretty euphoric and happy as well. It's kind of funny. But if you dehydrate too much, it can be detrimental to your health. So you have to hydrate all the time. There was just so many things I wanted to do with my mom, and unfortunately, she passed away. Um, and we were having success. Actually, her pain had completely gone for an entire day. Just basically using the CBD oil and the tablets. Or was it CBD oil? I can't remember. I think it was we were using turmeric. We were treating her with turmeric. She was still using her medications. She had two intense chemotherapies that really broke her down. And we were trying to get her to recoup from that. And I was having success because dietary success. But family, boy, some people sabotaged the process and we lost her. I was there with her to the very end. She died in my arms. Workplace still criminalizes it and fires you if you have it in your system. Oh, really? Stays in your system long after the high effects are gone. That's the issue. Bellarmine Boy says, how would they measure the amount of THC in your body, like a breathalyzer and alcohol in your body? No. THC is analyzed by doing blood tests. Chemotherapy is the worst. No, it's actually, chemotherapy is not bad. Again, a lot of people just don't understand. It's how it's applied. And my uncle right now is getting chemotherapy up in the States, but they're mixing it with naturopathic methods, and both can go hand in hand. In fact, there are naturopathic chemotherapies as well. So, no, chemotherapy is not bad. It's just that the people in my country didn't know what the fuck they were doing with my mom, and she was like an experimental rat, but she believed in the system, and other people convinced her to use the system, and it killed her. Effectively, they dehydrated my mother, and she died of asphyxiation because she refluxed, just like how I'm refluxing here, and all the fluid went up into her lungs and drowned her. There were two incidents when that happened with me when I was there with her. When we lay her down, she asphyxiated on coconut oil, and she came back from the dead. We prayed, and she came back. And the other time, she fell on the floor, busted her head, blood was everywhere, and we were able to recover her as well. So she had asphyxiated twice before, and this third time, I was trying to keep her sitting up, and the nurse made her lie back down, and she asphyxiated and died. I was trying to explain to the nurse that I knew what I was doing, but it didn't matter. They got her to lie down, and she asphyxiated again and died. So I know for a fact that the medical system has flaws. I'm not going to say that I'm anti-medical system and traditional medicine. Absolutely not. But I know for a fact that there are other methods and means whereby people can recover from their illnesses. And that is why, I agree with some things that Donald Trump says, which some people call alternative facts, but they're not. Substance abuse and domestic violence increase as people are isolated from this COVID. Again, COVID, we all know it's a worldwide pandemic, right? We speak about pandemic. Most people know this. But COVID is something that can cause people to become anxious, excitable, frightened, especially with the combined combination. Some people are not working. They're locked up in a house at home. They're told not to go out, not to mingle, not to mix with people. Every human being needs social interaction. What I will always tell people is social distancing does not mean that you can't socialize. This is two different things, right? You can still talk to your neighbors. You can still talk to your friends. It just means that you're going to maintain a certain decorum and distance from people who you're not verified to be sanitized. If you're sanitized and you've done the proper sanitized procedures, and you can. I talk to my neighbors all the time, and we sometimes stay within 3 feet of each other, etc. And nobody gets COVID. Okay, so you have to be able to understand and sift information. And when you do so, then you're able to, as any intelligent and human being who has reasoning, understand that these measures are not. Some people panic. I remember when I went into a store, for example, and I didn't have on a mask, and another guy did. A police officer, I didn't have on a mask, and the lady was barking at the police officer, not understanding he was an undercover police officer, and she was yelling at him to stand back, and then she took her hand and pushed him, and she was all very excitable. And I was standing on the other end, and the guy who was in the store, who manages the store, said, "Hey, that's assault. You shouldn't do that." And then he explained to the lady after the police officer left that that was a police officer, and you shouldn't touch him. And that you touching him just sort of messed up the whole idea of social distancing. You don't want to contaminate your hands touching somebody. You know what I mean? So the paranoia that she had over COVID is unnecessary. You take steps, you take measures, and then you try to protect yourself. You always have measures in place. Have that vitamin C on hand. Have your lemon on hand. Have your ginger on hand. Have your garlic on hand. Have your nebulizing equipment, which will be just simply a pot with steam on hand for if you get any signs or symptoms of COVID. Okay, boost your immune system as a precautionary measure. And then take the necessary steps that they tell you to do in public, which is simply social distancing, proper hygiene, and have some sort of mask of some kind, a screen or something on hand, especially if you're coughing like I am, like an idiot. You don't want to be out there coughing. Yeah, I don't want to be out there coughing, okay? So even though I'm talking on this program and coughing right now, when I go outside, I'm not coughing at all. All right. When I cough, you can feel the mucus come up to my nose. That's how bad it is. So I'm just going to go get some more water here. As soon as I stop talking, I don't really cough as much because my lining's not as irritated. I should probably get a lozenge or some kind. Otherwise, I'm probably going to get an infection on my lungs and in my throat. I don't want to get there. So, yeah, it's this paranoia that people started having. I remember when people started buying up toilet papers and napkins, and they went on a buying spree, and people bought up a lot of stuff. I never did that. I never panicked. Apollo says, "Why do you call it a pandemic? Seem to support Joe Biden. Democrats are pushing COVID, wanting lockdowns, etc." Okay, so to Apollo, let me explain myself. First of all, democracy has it's one of the fundamental things is democracy. It doesn't make a difference if it's not about voting for Joe Biden. It's for voting for democracy. If I was to vote, you understand? You can clearly see that Donald Trump is on an autocratic stint, and the fact that the place is destabilized because of him is one of the major reasons why most people voted for Joe Biden. It wasn't because they liked Joe Biden. It was because they needed to make sure democracy was preserved. So that's the first step. Now, the second step is I don't agree with a lot of the policies of Joe Biden, certain things, but there's a lot of other things that I agree with. So just like how people voted for Donald Trump, even though they didn't agree with everything he was doing, just so people voted for Joe Biden, even though they didn't agree with everything he's doing. That's so simple. It's really simple. Okay, so now that that's out the window, that doesn't mean that this is not a pandemic. See, some people are just all or nothing. They're all or nothing people. Oh, you should vote for Trump because you don't agree with everything that Joe Biden says. Or you should vote for Joe Biden because you don't agree with everything that Trump says. No, it doesn't work like that. That's why, like I said before, I'm not against people who voted for Trump. I get where they're coming from. Just that I measured the stakes at hand, and I said, if I had to vote, I would vote for Joe Biden. Because the trajectory to Donald Trump's going down. All right, so if you guys haven't seen, in Soviet Russia, they also denied that COVID is an issue. And they portray to the world propaganda that their hospitals and everything's under control until you see what's going on inside of Russia and inside those hospitals and the mayhem and dead bodies all around the place. I don't need that, motherfucker. I don't need a regime that's trying to paint one picture, but the reality is something else. I don't need that. And Donald Trump and his whole entire set of people who are with him, his team, have gotten COVID. So, I mean, this is common sense now, right? They've been reckless with it, and that's why a lot of people got COVID. So even though I'm agreeing with certain things that he said about COVID and masks and so on, I agree with those things, but I don't agree with recklessness. I don't conduct myself in a reckless fashion. We don't need lockdowns because it's not as bad as portrayed. First of all, Democrats have never, Joe Biden has not said that he is for lockdowns. He said where in certain states there is rampant spread of COVID, they will need to ramp down accordingly. And that's what my country did. They ramped down. As soon as the cases started to rise, they took other measures to ramp down things. So while the place is not shut down, all businesses are not shut down. It's not like an all-round curfew. Businesses are open. They would limit the amount of hours. They would stipulate how many people can go inside of a given space at a given period in time. Sometimes bars were closed down, but the small shops, the small businesses were allowed to be open. And then on the smaller scale, the real parlors and shops, at a certain point in time, nobody needed to even follow COVID regulations. People were walking in without masks. Now it's mandated that masks are used in my country, at least at the moment. But nobody was walking in with masks, and even with the mask law right now, some people walk around without masks. It's just what it is, So I'm just saying this to tell you what's going on the ground. Now, my country's been very effective at controlling COVID. All right, that's just what it is. They've been very effective. They've been very vigilant. I thought their mask law was kind of a bit overdone. People should have chose to use masks or not, and businesses could have had a mask-only policy. But the thing that I understand where they were coming from with the mask, like I said before, it's the mentality of the people, my country. But I do believe they need to push and continue to push boosting your immune system, healthy living, and healthcare in that respect. And I think that's where I and Bill Maher and some other people who are Republicans and Democrats alike agree on. I do believe that Donald Trump was very reckless with it and talking in a very reckless manner, which is why he got COVID. You know what I mean? Do I think that hydroxychloroquine is something that can help with COVID? I haven't looked into it thoroughly, but yes, certain studies from Japan had supported it, and apparently people get results using it. Now, I'm not too sure if it's 100% true, though. I have to actually do some more research on it to tell you, because people are still talking about how, this, that, and the other. But I always said you don't even need to use hydroxychloroquine. Like I said before, this thing is treated like if you have a cold. It's a much more severe version, and it can really harm your body very badly. You can get blood clots and die from that. But at the end of the day, it's more like a cold. So you treat it just like how you treat a cold. You use your vitamin C tablets. You use immune boosters, whether it's a multivitamin. You can use also citrus, particularly lemons or limes, right? And then you have your lozenge, which is something to smooth out your throat and stuff, which would be like olive oil, honey, but particularly olive oil is a good lozenge to carry it with. And then you have other immune boosters like garlic and ginger. And if you want to, you can add an anti-inflammatory like turmeric. Okay, and that stuff alone will help you to pass the cold. It's a cold, a vicious cold, but it's a cold. That's all it is. a man-made cold. That's what makes it dangerous. But we've seen the Ebola come around, H1N1. We've seen bird flu. We've seen a number of different things, right? The mad cow disease, right? They came on the scene and precautions were taken. I think the problem with it was Donald Trump ignored the precautionary measures, which is why the pandemic happened in America. But it wouldn't have happened in America if he hadn't ignored it. It would have been something like a H1N1. And then globally, it would have been controlled as well because they would have nabbed it since it was in China. They would have taken care of that business. It was sloppy work in China, why it actually spread. And some people say it was because the Chinese wanted to do this to the world so they could get, economic control over things. And China has it somewhat under control, but I have different reports that say they don't. So y'all need to be careful. Different people need to be careful what you do in your labs because y'all fucking up majorly. We know it's a man-made disease. That's not just something that just came out of the clear blue sky. And we know that disease was designed to wipe out a certain set of people as usual. A certain race of people. This is what this disease was for. And if you look right now, in minorities and in colored communities, this is the disease that's devastating. And then they want to vaccinate these people. They want to use them as guinea pigs. You see what I'm saying? I don't like it. That's why I say the vaccine process needs to be transparent. Again, all of this is more rumor and hearsay. It's not really factually based. I'm just going down the line. Tinfoil hat is on. Bing! Talking like this. I really don't have verified facts for that. That's wiping out colored people and shit like that. Right. Bellyman Boy says I voted for Jurgen. Sorry. I voted for Jurgensen. Not sure if I like Biden either. Only time will tell. But Trump was an absolute narcissistic tyrant who would turn our society into an authoritarian state. Yes, for definite. That's the problem with him. He wasn't really. He really is not. He's not a politician that's for the democratic process. He's a winner. He likes to win. And he does things by all means necessary. He has no mores. Bellyman Boy says Trump is dangerous. Although he is cartoonishly incompetent, we have to understand that 72 million people voted for him despite his gross incompetence and failures for the past 4 years. Again, he didn't fail on everything. Okay? He did not fail on everything. Yes, he was grossly incompetent, and thank God he is, because if he wasn't, we'd be in a problem right now. But he is, so good for that. What I would say, though, is the people who supported him, like I said before, they were looking for change, something different. Some of them were lashing back at the fact that a black man, Barack Obama, came into power. And, some of them had their hopes and dreams built around him pulling America out of certain situations. They didn't feel the effects of that. Now, even some people in the black community were talking about how he failed them, not understanding the challenge that was faced for him. He wanted to do more, but, SIL said Trump did a great job. What do you mean, brother? Okay, so Sil, cool. I'd say this. Let me address Sil like this. I'll address it like this. You know what Donald Trump did? And again, I'm very happy about this because he did a lot of things that, in a way, are good for the American people. One, he showed that people with disabilities could become president of the United States. And I don't mean this in any kind of sarcastic way or anything. That somebody who has a lot of problems, mentally challenged, etc., that they can become president. He's a brilliant guy. Don't get me wrong. He's a brilliant guy, but he has deficiencies, right? And as much as that sounds crazy, that's a good thing. Now, with respect to what he's also done is he's allowed certain things that are visceral, the undercut of America, both good and bad, to come to the surface. I think the electorate voted him out only because the electorate forcibly was prone to see the underbelly of what America is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Trump was able to viscerally bring that to the surface by his own visceral tendencies that he had. And so he was a very opinionated president and very vocal and very raw. And I think that in his presidency will be one of the hallmarks of good things that he will be known for, actually. That he didn't speak in a language that was typical of what politicians spoke. It's very raw. And for certain Republican bases, they liked that. They thought that raw means honest. But raw does not mean honest. Yeah, I mean, he lied on every, I mean, he just literally lied a lot. Okay. But he was raw. And so that provoked a raw response from people and actually got people more into the political process. A lot of people who would normally not say anything started to become vocal, and people came out of the shadows to speak. And I think that's a good thing. Again, he did a good thing. He also tested democracy. He put democracy on trial for the whole world to see by doing a lot of undemocratic things and abusing his powers as president of the United States and being very brutal with it, and also to some degree emboldening racist groups around the country. But he also helped the United States of America review itself and its history. And so he's done a lot of things that are positive for the American public if the American public can look at it from a different lens. And for his supporters, he made them high five themselves all the time because they were like, look at that. The process is breaking down. The bullshit in Washington, is being overshadowed by a guy who's saying, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to make this happen. And fuck it. We're going to find a way to make it happen. So I think they were high-fiving each other because of that. They weren't benefiting from it, but they were high-fiving each other. And I get where they were coming from, like I said before. Apollo said Joe Biden's COVID response will be more strict than Trump's. His advisor said they could do a 4 to 6 lockdown. Biden said he would lock it down if science told him to, which they would. Again, I don't have a problem with certain states which are devastated by COVID taking measures to dial back, as I said before. We do it in my country, and we've dialed forward now, so the beaches are opened and people can go to the sea and stuff. And some people actually died when they went to the sea, drowned and shit. That's crazy people in my country. But so dialing it down makes sense until you can control it, but then dialing it back up. But here's the thing. If you're going to dial back stuff, you better have a package in place for the people that you are affecting their businesses by, because a lot of businesses have been affected by this COVID. My business has been affected, and a lot of businesses have been affected, okay? Especially the small to medium businesses. So if you're going to dial them back, you got to subsidize them. But here's the thing. You can't just subsidize them. You can't just subsidize them. You have to show a clear path to which they can know and be guaranteed that this is not indefinite. So if you're going to dial them back, you better dial it forward. And you better have a clear plan how you're going to dial back forward. And you must have a timeline in which you're going to dial back forward. That's where everybody gets suspicious. And that's where I get suspicious, even of my own government, and this new world order bullshit that they're trying to push down our throats. That's why I question certain things. And you should also question it too. Okay? Don't just take the Kool-Aid from nobody. Question things. But here's my thing. Be reasonable. Be able to see the other side. Be able to see why it benefits. The fact that most of Donald Trump's staff and his whole crew got COVID is because he was reckless with it. He was fucking reckless with it. No ifs, ands, or maybes. And so truth will come to the table. You can bullshit people for only so long, but then afterwards the truth will come and straighten everything out. God don't take no bullshit. I'm just letting y'all know. Okay, so that's what I got to say about that. Seal says, I hope Trump wins again. That day is gone, bro. It's gone. In terms of this election. In terms of another election, maybe. I don't hope he wins again. I don't want to see him again. I'm just being real with you. But like I said before, Seal, I get where you're coming from. I hope that this is what I hope. I hope that there's some sort of Republican representation in the future that can have a great plan we can rally behind and be somebody who, will not allow Congress and the Senate to do their political bullshit, filibusters and bullshit, will have the audacity and strength and ability to represent Americans. Because I get where you're coming from. I understand why you're supporting Trump, and I get what the crux of what you're saying is really. So I'm just saying it in words that you really want to say. It's not necessarily Trump that you want again, but somebody who would stand up to the bullshit in Washington. I think that's basically what you're saying. And get shit done. Paulo says Joe Biden just backtracks on every policy he talks about. Well, I don't know about that. The verdict is out. Just like I gave Trump a chance, I'm gonna give Biden a chance to prove himself to us. Bellyman Boy says, as far it is not as bad as portrayed, depends on who you're talking to. But as stated above, how bad do you think my hospital is? Whew, I don't know, bro. Where are you? What state are you in? And where are you living? And what the fuck is going on there is very important. In my country, the hospitals are not over blocked up or none of that shit. We got the COVID under control here. But where you are, it depends on what state you're in. In some states, it's not a major problem, you know. In other states, it's a big deal. So you have to know what state you're in, and therefore that's why it's not blanket. It's not going to be a federal law where all the states shut down. That's bullshit, you know. And it might even be a state. It might be a county. It may be a district that's shut down. Like when the COVID incident happened in my area, where a school child came in who had to take exams and had COVID, they just shut down an area. It wasn't even the entire, you know. So it depends, you know. Now that could lead to some real, you know, big brother shit, you know. And that's, you see, everything sets precedent. But if you take measures against what has happened, you can stop precedent from happening by taking precautionary measures. So that's where you guys have checks and balances on that shit. Paulo says it's not. Most deaths come from unrelated issues, but if you test positive for COVID, then you're added to the toll. This is also correct. Most hospitals are not overflowing at all. Never seen one in the UK. You're in the UK, buddy. This is, you should be talking about America, and we're talking about certain states. The boxing science says Joe Biden is suffering from Parkinson's syndrome. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't think so. I think he has a stammering problem. Apollo, yes, the main issue is that Joe Biden will be controlled by his party. They will probably use the 25th Amendment on him, which can get rid of presidents that are unable to serve cognitive issues, etc. They're not going to get rid of him. Bellyman says in state hospitals are overwhelmed. I work in one. Deaths come from unrelated issues perpetually heightened from COVID, known as comorbidities. Yes, sir. That's why when you have a pre-existing condition, if you get COVID, you know, you could be at risk because of your immune system. However, if you boost your immune system, you'll be less at risk. But I would say this. I would say that while COVID is a real issue, you know, in my country, my dad actually died because we had the big issue with that dengue-like fever that was happening that came from Africa. I forgot what the name of it is. And that's, my dad was a casualty in the hospital because of that. They didn't attend to him because the hospital was so full. So it's not the first time something like this has happened, you know, but at the same time, the problem with it was that some doctors were encouraged to put on people's things, even though they didn't die of COVID, that they died of COVID. So somebody might die of diabetes or a heart attack because of hypertension or whatever. And they were encouraged to say that this person died of COVID. Some people even were put on COVID wards. So this bullshit was happening all around the world. And that's why I said it's a pandemic. Now, they want to make COVID look very severe. Now they're actually getting what they want. So, you know, so they can put restrictions on people. Now it's up to Joe Biden and his team and people not to do, first of all, a nationwide shutdown, because that'll tell me a lot. So I'm looking to see, that's why I say I don't trust Joe Biden or anything, but I'm looking to see now. The next step is we got Trump out of, we got Trump out of office. That means the destabilizing force is not there. So now we can see clearly if they're going to play, what game plan they're doing, because there's certain people who are pushing certain agendas, And Robert Kennedy Jr., who's a guy who speaks on vaccines all the time, he was talking about how both Bill Gates and also the guy, Mr. Fauci, they are proponents of these vaccines and so on, but with certain sinister consequences behind them. So the fact that Fauci's even talking still. I know of a lady who went to prison, and her documentaries all around. This is where this pandemic thing came from. It comes from a lady who was speaking behind the scenes of what bullshit was going on with HIV/AIDS, as well as what was going on with a lot of other diseases. And this is where Robert Kennedy Jr., who is an advocate for proper vaccination and a transparent process, he was talking in detail about these things. So it's not a right or left wing thing. Robert Kennedy Jr. is a Republican. The lady who, Democrat, sorry, the lady who I was speaking with, who was a scientist, she was a Republican. So it's not a right or left issue. It's a human issue. And it's very important that we understand that, and we understand how deep this rabbit hole goes, but we must use common fucking sense. You cannot just go out there and be saying, oh, yeah, Trump would have saved us. No, Trump wouldn't save your ass. He didn't save his ass. So he ain't going to save you, okay? Don't put your confidence in one person. I said trust each other. You got to go grassroots. The power's in you. It's not in some fucking government. And that's where a lot of you guys just miss the boat all the time. All right. The partisan politics, the politics here was to make sure that the American people said, I don't have confidence in Trump, and Biden better watch his ass because we don't have confidence in him either. That's what the American public's basically saying. That's why they're moving from president to president to president. At least they trusted Obama. But then they felt like they were written off because when they looked at what he was effectively doing, they wondered if it was for the better or for the worse, even though people were put in a better position. So I'm letting you guys know all of this stuff so you can understand the game that's being played. Okay, if you guys don't have a sense of the game, then you're fucked. But if you have a sense of the game, then you will be able to understand what's going on. Like I said before, the guy who's doing Justice League right now, Zack Snyder, he understands it all. You know, he's a pretty decent dude. Again, I don't worship him. I see a lot of people doing cult worship. That's some bullshit, calling him the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Zack Snyder. Fuck that. He's a nice dude. I like him. You know, but don't get it twisted. I don't worship no man, and I never will. All right, guys, I'm what you need. I'm gonna catch you guys later. We're gonna talk some more boxing, and I'm gonna catch you guys later, man. Peace.